799. That is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the program. Hey, joining us now, I want to welcome. We have Mr. Mark West is with us. Mark is a Libertarian candidate for governor, and he's on the phone. Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for having me on, Paul. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you announced, what was it, yesterday, the day before?
Now it's Monday night. Yes, sir.
Monday night. Okay, Monday night. Well, so tell us. I want to get into the Libertarian Party of Arkansas here in just a moment, but just tell us why you, Mark West, why have you decided to run for governor of the state of Arkansas?
Well, I think you've spent the first half hour of your program describing why I, Mark West, am running for governor of Arkansas. Our governor, who's supposed to be a conservative, had a press conference today, and he practically begged Senate Republicans in Washington, D.C. to act like Democrats and give him a bailout. He seems to like the swampy water of D.C., and he wants to bring it to Arkansas, and true conservatives need an option to vote for in the upcoming election, and I want to give them that option. I want to give them an option to place their vote in if they're tired of the bullying politics that Asa has employed in this state against Republicans, against Democrats, as far as pressuring people to, withholding funding for certain types of bills in order to get people to vote for internet taxes and things like that. It's shameful to me what's happened in the governor's office since he's been there, considering that he has, he is supposed to be the conservative. He campaigned against these things, and he has pushed them since he's been governor. And the voters in Arkansas deserve to have a real choice on the ballot, and right now I'm in there as the one true conservative voice as far as fiscal government is concerned.
Yeah,
they don't have that otherwise.
Well, at this point, I would have to agree with you. I have heard from so many conservatives. They Facebook message me. It's in the comments of our Facebook, and they say that they're not going to vote for Asa. And many of our text messages are wanting, I've asked about another option. But, I've had some that just say, I'm going to vote for a Democrat because you might as well. Because at least then you know what you're getting. And, so there's a ton of frustration out there among the grassroots of folks who don't agree with where Asa has taken us, especially when you compare what his campaign rhetoric was about what the Second Amendment says, his opposition to Obamacare, school choice, and all of these things that he campaigned on, and then you look at the results. And I was down there at the Marble Palace, Mark, and I saw there's official accounts, and then there's what the people on the ground, the lobbyist people will tell you what really happened. And so you got a lot of these issues that a lot of people don't know about. So talk a little bit about you mentioned the Republican Party. Now, from a libertarian standpoint, have you noticed that there are conservative Republicans who are I don't know, they're not really very high up on the governor's list? What do you think about that?
I have noticed that there are a lot that are not sold on Governor Hutchinson. They don't buy and they don't believe in the brand of what he calls conservatism that he's brought to the governor's to the office of governor. Libertarian, our philosophy is a free market philosophy. We are also a fiscally, conservative philosophy. We want to work to streamline the government. We don't want to make it bigger. And that was the reason so many people pushed to get Republicans in office and get, a governor like Asa, was to keep this private option, this Medicaid expansion from coming to Arkansas, because the voters in Arkansas, they're not, they're smart, they're informed, and they know how budgets work. They know that in order to pay for something like this, the money has to come from somewhere. And basically, Asa told us today that and even though, he said we would have to raise taxes, but we're not going to do that, or we'll have to cut benefits, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to basically beg the federal government to bail us out. And that is not Arkansas. We are the sovereign state of Arkansas. The 10th Amendment empowers us to be a sovereign state. We should not have a governor who is willing to make us dependent on the whims of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's kind of like
voters in Arkansas are frustrated about that.
It's kind of like he doesn't want to come out and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have done this. And I don't necessarily think he believes that. I mean, I think there's all the evidence out there in the world is like, hey, we shouldn't have expanded this program, 300,000 able-bodied adults. They're not entitled to free health insurance. I don't necessarily know if he believes that, though. I think he actually believes that it's now our responsibility to adopt what Washington, D.C. has told us, and that's now a new concept of government, which is everybody is responsible by law for everybody else's health care coverage. Do you think that that's
the maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thanks so much for being with us. Our phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We got a great show for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about Planned Parenthood here in just a moment. Then we're going to bring you a story from the Tax Foundation. We're going to kind of go over all of the different groups today, national groups who are against the internet sales tax, whether it's state level or at the national level. It's going to be pretty interesting stuff. Also, we want to talk about the Civil War Memorial that is on the grounds of the Capitol down at the Marble Palace, that now starting to get some traction as far as some reports of people, gathering outside the statue. I don't know if those are accurate or not. I have another report that I'm waiting to confirm that just came up on Twitter that says that the Arkansas Democrat Party has just called for all Confederate statues in Arkansas to be removed, taken down, and put in a museum. And that report is actually Inside Arkansas Politics on Twitter, which says that they are a blog for KNWA, so Northwest Arkansas News. And that's what they tweeted. So it's a Fayetteville news outlet tweeting that. Anyway, all that being said, we also have, and we'll talk more about this at 5 o'clock, but hey, Joe, will you go ahead and show our listeners what I'm talking about? We've got Billy Fleming, who I've been engaged with before on Twitter, back and forth. This is a leftist. This is a liberal guy. He has posted this tweet, which is the beginning. What does the tweet say? Here is a Arkansas Politics ARPX to-do list, posting now a list of monuments. So in Arkansas, Confederate monuments in Arkadelphia, Little Rock, 2 of them in Little Rock, 1 in Batesville, 1 in Bentonville, Camden, Conway, Dardanelle, El Dorado, Fort Smith, Hot Springs, Lone Oak, Jacksonport, Pine Bluff, Searcy, Star City, Van Buren. My point is, and that's not the whole list, I don't believe. My point is, it's starting, folks. It's starting. This whole the societal madness of trying to sanitize history, of trying to, that's all. I've told you why that people are doing this. I told you why the children are behaving this way, and it's because they don't know how to reconcile an injustice. And the only way that they know how to put up with they can recognize what an injustice is. They can recognize what evil is, but they don't know the solution to it. And so their only option is to try to fix it with their own hands. They want to try to make men better by doing things that men do, which is ridiculous. That they want to try to perfect man by
erasing our history and just forgetting about it. The equivalent of just putting your head, the historical equivalent of just putting your head in the sand, burying your head in the sand. So, that's not over there. I don't like that. And what they are trying to do is fix themselves. They're trying to fix society. They're trying to fix this fallen world we live in with their own hands by sanitizing this history. And I just want all of you to know that when I look at the situation that's going on, that actually gives me great sympathy for how lost some of these people are, in my opinion, just in terms of how they are really just they're just tossed to and fro, and they don't really know what to do. And it actually gives me sympathy for them in a way to at least be able to acknowledge what's happening, to at least be able to say, well, here's the larger symptom. Because it makes no sense to go back and say we're going to tear down some monument because bad things happened at that time. It makes absolutely no sense. That's not going to fix anything, and logically everybody knows that. I will talk more about this at 5, though, because we've got some issues. We got some stories, and specifically, I know the governor's made a statement about it, as well as some other folks. But I'm just telling you, it's starting. It's going towards just a bad place. It's just a bad, illogical place, and it's frustrating because a lot of people, a lot of people just get angry when people, we're getting further and further apart. You know what I mean? And we don't understand one another, and that can be dangerous. 870-275-9799. Okay. Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. So, Planned Parenthood of the Heartland is the Arkansas, abortionists. That's who they are. And interesting thing about all that, we actually gave Governor Asa Hutchinson props back a while ago when he cut off the funding to Planned Parenthood of the Heart. My goodness, who is that?
It's a trend.
This is the trend right now on Twitter?
One of them.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I can't. I can't believe that. That's incredible. That is the trend. That is now trending on Twitter. 1,455 tweets. Quote, I hope Trump is assassinated is what is trending on Twitter right now. Unbelievable. Or believable.
And then there's this one.
Which one?
The one second to the bottom.
Oh, then there's another one trending. I voted for Trump. That's got 75,000 tweets. Okay. Well, anyway, that's despicable. All right, so Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, that's the abortionist here in Arkansas. And so Governor Asa Hutchinson, back when it was discovered that Planned Parenthood was selling baby body parts, there was all these calls to defund Planned Parenthood across the country. Now, and it still needs to happen, still hasn't been done. It's a shame that it hasn't been done. Because, this is our society being really confronted with, we talk about evil. Let's talk about, people want to talk about the evils of the Civil War. Let's talk about the modern-day slavery that is abortion. Anybody want to talk about that? Have you heard anybody make that comparison? Right now, we've got mass genocide. We've got modern-day genocide. We still have the Democrat Party on the side of deciding who are people and who are not. The Democrat Party used to decide who are people based on the color of your skin, whether or not you had rights under the Constitution of the United States. Now the Democrat Party says, well, if you're 20 weeks, you're not a person yet. They literally are still in the business of deciding who are people and who are not people. That is the modern-day Democrat Party, and it was also the Democrat Party of the slavery days. But you don't hear anybody making that logical conclusion. You don't hear anybody in the media saying that. We've got a modern-day genocide going on now, and we've got people tearing down Robert E. Lee statues, actually thinking that it'll accomplish something. We've got people tearing down Robert E. Lee statues and then treating inanimate objects like they're people, spitting on the statues and flipping the statue off as if the statue would somehow be offended by getting flipped off by some punk teenage kid or some person that lives in their grandmother's basement that hasn't ever worked, a full 8-hour day in their life. Anyway, Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, they decided to challenge Governor Asa Hutchinson's defunding of them, and they lost for the time being. On Wednesday, we missed this story yesterday, we didn't give it to you. On Wednesday, a 3-judge panel from the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Arkansas can decline to provide Medicaid reimbursements to abortion providers. The ruling comes as part of an ongoing lawsuit filed after the state of Arkansas cut Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood in 2015. Family Council President Jerry Cox issued a statement saying, quote, Family Council, that terrible organization, Family Council, that has drifted away from its mission. That terrible organization, Family Council, that Senator Jim Hendren wants to know who the donors are to, so he can try to, make an excuse for the way he voted. That horrible organization, Family Council, that's been on the ground advocating for social issues down at the Marble Palace when nobody wanted to listen for 30 years. That organization standing up here congratulating Governor Hutchinson when he does the right thing. Family Council President Jerry Cox issued a statement, quote, "The 8th Circuit did the right thing today. Arkansans have made it clear time and time again they do not want tax money going to abortion providers. Many Arkansans have moral objections to abortions. They don't want their hard-earned money subsidizing abortion providers." Cox praised Governor Asa Hutchinson and Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge for defending the state's decision to cut Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. Quote, "Governor Hutchinson's bold leadership is what led the state to cut ties with Planned Parenthood in the first place. Our governor has always been a staunch pro-life advocate. Arkansas's Attorney General is defending at least 7 pro-life laws and policies in court right now. I don't know of any Attorney General in America who is doing more to fight for the right to life. Her team has won some major victories in the past few weeks, and I believe we will see more in the months to come." That terrible organization, Family Council, that, these people in the Republican Party establishment, you don't like your score on a scorecard that's just reflecting how you voted. There must be something wrong with Family Council, you say. Give me a break. You guys are terrified that people not only will find out that you're not fiscal conservatives or limited government conservatives, but you're not even social conservatives. That's what you're terrified of. Here we go. I mean, let's talk about Jerry Cox's statement here for a second, just for a moment. This is Jerry Cox showing how objective he is, that when the policy goals of the Family Council are supported and upheld, he gives the governor credit. This is the same Jerry Cox who came on this program and criticized the Arkansas legislature for maybe not wanting to run this conservative bill or that conservative bill because they had to check with the governor first. You see, this is not personal. Get it through your heads. This is not personal. This is about what you are actually doing, not what you bloviate about on Twitter. Not what you try to convince the voters you are. This is what you have done, or in some cases, what you have not done. It's not personal. Although some of these situations can be put into parodies and actually made quite humorous. Now, what did the governor say about this? August 16th, Governor Hutchinson issues a response to the 8th Circuit Planned Parenthood ruling. He issued the following statement in response to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Quote, "In 2015, the state terminated its Medicaid provider agreement with Planned Parenthood because there was evidence that Planned Parenthood and its affiliates were acting in an unethical manner and engaging in what appeared to be wrongful conduct." Oh, gosh. I don't know. We talk about whitewashing history. That's certainly whitewashing something. They appear to be engaging in wrongful conduct. How about talking about how much a baby's leg is going to go for over a nice glass of Chardonnay? How about that? Because that's what was really happening. Look, I'm glad Asa cut off funding for Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. I think it's great, but I do think it's comical or at least noteworthy. They were selling baby body parts. Come on, guys. Let's see here. What else do we have? Planned Parenthood and its affiliates were acting in an unethical manner and engaging in what appeared to be wrongful conduct. I am pleased with the ruling of the Eighth Circuit today, reversing Judge Baker on her injunction that blocked the state from proceeding. The decision allows the state to proceed with the termination of Planned Parenthood as a medical provider. This is a substantial legal victory for the right of the state to determine whether Medicaid providers are acting in accordance with best practices and affirms the prerogative of the state to make reasoned judgments on the Medicaid program. That is it. End quote. Governor Asa Hutchinson on Planned Parenthood. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for listening.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get Nephewed.
Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Need to get something off your chest? Then call or text Paul now, 870-275-9799.
You know what I just found out? I can't believe, because I was second-guessing myself, just making sure that, the Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, the defunding thing was at the same time. as the baby body part scandal. And it's crazy it's been that long, you know. It's August of 2017. News broke of this happening, you know, talking about what we're going to sell this baby body part for, you know, and that sort of thing. It was June or July of I just closed out the window. I think it was July of 2015. Good grief. Can't believe it's been that long. And then you had video after video, and then you had those guys being prosecuted, you know, for filming them and everything. I mean, it's just and I will tell you this, you know, bringing that back up to the forefront is not something that the media wants to do. I'll tell you that much right now. It's something that we need to do, though, because, yeah, you're talking about an organization that gets $500 billion in our taxpayer funds each year nationally, and yet, as far as I know, that's still going on. What's going on? I think, and I said this a couple months ago, if there's ever a reason to shut down the government of the United States of America because Democrats won't give in on defunding Planned Parenthood, this is it. I know people are freaked out about, you know, what we'll lose the power, we'll lose this or that. Folks, there does come a time when your principles do have to mean something. And I know that's up for debate and when that time is, but in my opinion, because abortion's such a low-hanging fruit issue for everybody in Arkansas for the most part, it's my number one issue, meaning that I would never vote for somebody who is pro-choice or pro-abortion is what they say nowadays. That's now becoming the acceptable way to phrase it. Isn't that interesting? Pro-abortion, it used to be very offensive to call someone pro-abortion. But I would never vote for somebody that's, because then it's just, okay, I can't listen to anything else you say, right? They could be like, hey, I want to lower your taxes, I want to limit government, I want to shrink government, but this is where libertarians can get in trouble sometimes. But I want people to be able to have the right to kill a child. That's where I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to anything else you have to say. It's number one issue, and so if we're really looking at the deaths that have occurred, if you really take a step back and you look at the deaths that have occurred since 1974, 54, 55, 56 million children. It's a much more serious problem than that when you consider the children would have had. Yeah, I'd shut the government down over funding. Yeah, absolutely. In a heartbeat. Take a stand. Go directly to the American people. Tell them what's going on. Put forever to rest the debunked theory, or debunk it finally, that no, Planned Parenthood and mammograms, it's not. I mean, Planned Parenthood and mammograms are like two peas in a pod, much more so than abortion. That's not true, folks. That's not true. Follow me on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. That's at Paul Harrell 1776. Yeah, I just kudos to Mr. Jerry Cox with his statement there from the Family Council on this big news that Arkansas will be able to deny Medicaid payments to Planned Parenthood of the Heartland here in Arkansas. That is terrific news. And it's very, very good of Asa Hutchinson back in 2015 to do what he did and to defund that organization. It did get tied up in court, but the Eighth Circuit ruled in Arkansas's favor that we do have autonomy in this way, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a victory. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's right, Joe. All right, so yeah, don't ever say we don't give credit where credit is due. All right. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about the internet sales tax. We're going to talk about little organization, just a little organization called the Tax Foundation. And their headline here, our article yesterday, John Bull and Joseph Henchman. Wow, what a crazy last name. Joseph Henchman. Their headline, Amazon's marketplace business isn't a tax avoidance scheme. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
It's the truth.
No, that's not the truth. But that is ACE's truth.
Right,
ACE's
that's what I meant.
Truth is what works in D.C. should work in Arkansas, and the people in Arkansas don't agree with him. And I hear that in places that I go, conservatives that I talk to. People are frustrated with D.C. politics. I mean, Donald Trump just won the presidency because people are frustrated with D.C. politics and they want somebody to bust it up. Well, D.C. politics is going on in Little Rock right now, and voters need to. It's time to vote for an outsider. Send someone to Little Rock who really wants to legitimately break up the system, that legitimately wants to run things different, and who's not afraid of these people. They're, I'm not on anybody's payroll. I'm not getting special interest money. I don't have, I'm not out trying to establish PACs to push my candidates in primaries. I am here for the people of Arkansas to have a voice in Little Rock again. Because as of right now, Governor Hutchinson has hijacked the people's voice in Little Rock, and he's basically a mouthpiece for D.C. And now, in his mind, D.C. is going to betray him by, passing this the reconciliation bill is what they're calling it now in the Senate, where they're looking to phase this out, and he doesn't know where the money's going to come from, and he's trying to pass the buck to D.C. and trying to make it where we're blaming D.C. for his mistake of pushing this and fighting for it when he shouldn't have, when he should have taken a good approach that empowered people and empowered local communities and empowered the free market. Instead, he chose not to, and chose to empower and grow the size of the government in Little Rock. And the voters need to hold him accountable for it.
We're talking with Mark West. He's a Libertarian candidate for governor here in the state of Arkansas. Mark, talk a little bit about, kind of refresh our audience with who you are. You live in Batesville. You're a pastor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I've been a bivocational minister for about 15 years, and that's just a fancy word that says I work a full-time job and I pastor a church. So,
well, good for you.
But I also work. Yeah, it's a calling. It's not something that you just step into. But I also work for a company called Mechanical Construction Services. I've run the corporate office for 10 years. We work in the power industry. We send crews all over the country doing shutdowns and maintenance and things of that nature. And I handle all of our licensing, taxes, payroll, billing, just the whole plethora. So I get to deal with government all day. So going to work every day makes me realize just how much we need to reduce the size of our government so that small businesses like the one I work for can thrive and grow and create the jobs that we need in this economy. The high-paying jobs aren't going to be your Bernie Sanders type, impose a $15 minimum wage. Your high-paying jobs are going to come when small businesses are set free from all the regulation that strangles them and that corners the market for the giant corporations. And that's what I stand for. I stand for making this a better place for the middle class, for the working class people that are just struggling, every week trying to make sure you've got enough money to pay the bills and make ends meet and get your kids in school. And I've been married for 20 years to a wonderful woman named Christy. I've got 3 children. My oldest is Matthew, and then Caleb is my middle child. He's 13. And then my daughter Micaiah is 11, and we're all kind of having a family venture this summer. The Batesville Community Theater is doing Shrek the Musical, and we're all going to be in it the last week of July. So, yeah, it's going to be a busy month for us.
Well, you guys.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Can you imagine if this effort to undermine social conservatives in Arkansas from people in the GOP leadership, if this effort were to be successful, I mean, just in terms of, well, I mean, I guess the governor wouldn't have to put up with bathroom bills anymore. I guess the governor wouldn't have to put up with, Religious Freedom Restoration Acts anymore. Pesky little things maybe you don't have to worry about. And that's what's really at play here with this scorecard coming in. I mean, and the fallout from it that continues. And there's not just a whole lot of people that are vocal about this on the record. There's Senator Jim Hendren. That's pretty much it. There's a lot of panicking going on, in my opinion, from what I can see. We have something called the 7. It's now 7 techniques. I'll share with you the 7 one. But we have 7 techniques that are used to grow government. And number 6 on that list is something we call projection and deflection. For example, you could go on Twitter and you could claim that someone is having a meltdown, when in fact they were actually having a pretty great time, like I was yesterday on the radio show. So you claim somebody else is having a meltdown when you are, in fact, having the meltdown. Because, I mean, look, I mean, I'm not the one that made these votes. I'm not the one that advocated for raising taxes on this, that, and the other so you could offset. I'm not the one that advocated for internet sales tax, gasoline increases, sales tax increases. I'm not the one whose people on your side are actually saying, well, maybe when we have traffic fatalities, people will start funding the roads seriously. Those are all leftist ideas, tax increases and, and pain point politics, that babies will die and bridges will collapse if we don't do what you want to do and grow government. By the way, pain point politics is number 4 on the list. I will talk about the newest one later in the program today. The newest technique to grow government, number 7, I think that's where we're going to stop it at 7, is the ER factor, or the factor. I'll tell you more about that later on. But speaking of Senator Jim Hendren, I noticed this tweet, and all of the people in the establishment, they're in their little bubble, and they like to get on Twitter and they like to say things, constantly bringing up this scorecard or the scorecard season that they're unhappy with, which is really, it's just pathetic. If you listen to Jim Hendren on Twitter, you would think that organizations have just come up with this new concept called a scorecard. You would think, well, scorecards are brand new. It's like the newest iPhone, it's brand new technology. In fact, scorecards have been out forever. Organizations across this country have been putting out scorecards for a very, very, very long time. And you don't like them, that's fine. It's just a mirror. You don't like the reflection that you're seeing, and that's fine. It's just your votes. And it's just a tool, by the way. It's just a tool. There were 2,000 bills passed. Ideally, it'd be great to score all 2,000 bills. But guess what? That's impossible to do. You guys move too fast down there anyway. So each group, whether you're the American Conservative Union, whether you're the Americans for Prosperity, whether you're Conduit for Commerce, whether you're Family Council, you follow a certain amount of bills. And you score those bills, and then you package it, and you say, this is how this person voted. And it's very simple. It's a simple idea. And you know what? If you don't get a good score on one scorecard, okay, maybe that's just a fluke. You don't get a good score on another scorecard, maybe that's just a coincidence. But then you start not getting the scores you want on all of them. Is it some massive conspiracy? Is it some massive conspiracy out there where you're just being called a liberal or a progressive in all these scorecards, and you don't like the reflection? You don't like the mirror? You don't like what you're seeing? That's not anybody's fault but your own, because you're the one that made the votes. And in this case, all of these legislators who are upset about scorecards, the ones who are, you really need to be asking Governor Asa Hutchinson why these were his priorities, because he's the one controlling the lapdog legislature. He's the one that's got people in positions of power, making sure you never have to hear a bathroom bill, making sure you never have to hear an actual Second Amendment bill in the Judiciary Committee. So it doesn't ever have a chance to get out, and Republicans or Governor Asa Hutchinson would actually have to sign it or veto it and then come out firmly against the Second Amendment. It's all about control. And they certainly have figured out a way to do that. And the scorecards reflect that. So these are Asa's votes just as much as there are these legislators. So you should thank Asa Hutchinson for being a good leader in conservatism if you don't like your scorecard. But I did notice the majority leader of the Senate, Senator Jim Hendren, he did decide to retweet Donald Trump. Donald Trump has now come out and he has been critical of Amazon. Donald Trump writing, Amazon is doing great damage to tax-paying retailers. Towns, cities, and states throughout the U.S. are being hurt. Many jobs are being lost. So here's Donald Trump. And if you'll notice yesterday, When we played President Donald Trump's really good press conference, and when you listen to it in the context, it was great. I made the comment that there are things that Donald Trump supports that I disagree with, and a national sales tax would certainly be one of those things. State sales taxes on Amazon or internet or certainly be something that I would be against. But on that note, if you'll just take a minute with me, and speaking of scorecards, speaking of groups who all seem to be doing taking the same position, that there are some people who call themselves Republicans that aren't really conservatives when it comes to the scorecard here in Arkansas. It's not a big conspiracy, although I guess you could think that it's just a giant conspiracy. But let's just look at the national groups and the state groups who don't support an internet sales tax, okay? Let's just think about it real quick. Americans for Tax Reform. We're about to read their article, okay? Heritage Foundation, Heritage Action, National Taxpayers Union, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, the Cato Institute, Eagle Forum, the R Street Institute, the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, the Conservative Caucus, the Center for Individual Freedom, the Campaign for Liberty, and Conduit for Action. So, I mean, those groups... Is it just some sort? Are all those groups just a big sham? Are all those groups just completely? I mean, I know they're probably more committed to principles than some of you folks in the General Assembly are. Are all they? Is it some massive conspiracy? Oh, I can't believe that they're against this. So, the Tax Foundation, they came out with an article specifically addressing President Donald Trump's tweet that I just read to you. The headline, Amazon's marketplace business isn't a tax avoidance scheme. President Trump, on more than one occasion, has accused Amazon of not paying taxes. The latest version came out this morning on Twitter. Most assume that he's referring to whether the e-commerce company collects sales taxes. So, does Amazon collect sales taxes? The short answer is yes. Now, again, this story, or this tweet by the president was retweeted by Jim Hendren with the caption, "Man, you're going to get an F on quote conservative in quote scorecards for sure." Essentially, I guess Senator Hendren is saying, well, I mean, I guess he is used to just blind obedience. His governor, the governor, his uncle, can, I guess, do no wrong in his eyes. You see, that's not what conservative thought is. I can support President Donald Trump and say I voted for him and say I'm glad that he did what he did at that press conference, or I'm glad that he's, calling out these, ridiculous, or taking things to their logical conclusion when we say, what's it going to be next? Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, that sort of thing. See, we can do that sort of thing, and then I can still, because I don't have any blind allegiance of faith to any person, I could still say, but you know what? I disagree with President Trump on an internet sales tax. You understand? Like, that's how these things work. That's how free societies work. That's how, real, honest arguments take place. Honest arguments and policy differences. So, President Trump on more than one occasion. Does Amazon collect sales taxes? The Tax Foundation, the short answer is yes. For brief background, we've talked about this many times before on the program. The United States Supreme Court in 1992 Quill decision ruled that retailers only have to collect sales taxes if they have a physical presence in the state. Most state sales tax laws are complex and use varying rules to define what's taxable and what isn't. Adding to the complexity, localities in many states also impose additional taxes on top of the state rate. There are currently more than 10,000 sales tax jurisdictions in the country. The court recognized that these complexities would burden interstate commerce and that it should be up to Congress to give states the authority to require out-of-state businesses to comply with myriad sales tax rules. Amazon has obviously grown substantially and has a much larger presence to facilitate faster shipping. As a result, it collects taxes on sales it makes in any state with a sales tax on the books. However, news came out yesterday that South Carolina is seeking uncollected taxes from Amazon related to its marketplace sales in the state. Not only is Amazon a retailer, but it also makes its online platform available to other businesses to reach a larger customer audience. On these sales, Amazon defers tax responsibilities to the third-party retailer. Is this what Trump's tweet is referring to? It's difficult to say. However, given the South Carolina news and comments last month by Secretary Mnuchin about Amazon's handling of direct sales versus marketplace sales, it's reasonable to guess that this is the point President Donald Trump is discussing. Again, the tweet, Amazon's doing great damage to tax-paying retailers. Towns, cities, states throughout the U.S. are being hurt, many jobs being lost. If it is, calling this tax avoidance or a loophole, as others have, is wrong or at best misleading. The debate over state sales tax collection authority and online sales is nearly 2 decades old. In that time, e-commerce has changed quite a bit. Unfortunately, with the exception of efforts by the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement member states, sales tax laws haven't become any simpler. The issue has been before Congress for years, with some solutions calling for substantial and much-needed sales tax simplification. These proposals have seen little movement. There is an effort to enact a federal law to establish a framework for sales tax collection by e-retailers, trading sales tax collection authority for states with simplifications to state sales tax laws. However, such proposals have stalled in Congress in recent years. Frustrated by federal inaction, South Dakota passed a law ordering all e-retailers to collect. The state has no other large tax besides the sales tax, and their sales tax is not riddled with exemptions like other state sales taxes are. It really does apply to every seller except e-retailers. And that will be heard this month by the South Dakota Supreme Court. It's a direct challenge to Quill, which, of course, Arkansas wanted to do the same thing. We wanted to challenge that law or that Supreme Court precedent. But Jake Files' bill, SB 140, failed because we have actual conservatives in the legislature that don't want to take more money from the people of Arkansas. But even if Quill is overturned by Congress or reversed by the court, marketplace sales are a tricky issue. It's one thing to require a retailer to collect the sales tax. It's another to redefine when a separate facilitator should take on the responsibility of a retailer. Minnesota and Washington State have recently adopted laws aiming to require sales tax collections on sales facilitated by third parties. Whether they realize it or not, these marketplace laws will pass higher costs onto small businesses and consumers. You hear that, so-called Republicans? Even if Amazon and eBay are capable of handling sales tax collections for marketplace sellers, those services aren't free. Nor should they be, given the wide range of rules one needs to navigate in all 50 states, not to mention the localities in some states with the authority to make their own determinations of what to tax. Whatever the tweet meant, President Trump's, states should seek to simplify their sales tax administration. More often than not, this important point gets lost in the quest for revenue. Lowering compliance costs would benefit the economy and allow states to collect taxes more efficiently. To ensure that these simplification efforts are adequate, Congress is the right venue to find a solution. Otherwise, states and localities will continue to pursue a piecemeal approach that creates even more complexity. Minnesota, Washington, South Carolina may think they have a solution, at least for Amazon's entire business model, but enhancements in technology will continue and could very well blur the line between retailers and facilitators. Allowing states to come up with any interpretation of this gray area would be problematic, leaving 50 different sets of lawmakers to try and hit a constantly moving target. If state sales laws were as simple as they probably should be, many of these concerns would go away. So, a couple of things here. First of all, you hear a lot of this echoed in Conduit for Action article. I know David Ferguson has mentioned it many times about how small businesses would really be hurt if they had to, have to worry about the sales tax laws in Indiana. But a larger point must be made here. A nationwide internet sales tax is a terrible idea, number one, because you're giving, even if it does come back to the states, you're giving a government more, more tributaries to suck up our money, right? And the only way to shrink government, especially in Washington, D.C., and we found out yesterday in Little Rock, is to cut off the amount of money they have access to. That will force them to have to shrink government. So, number one, that's number one. Number two, we must debunk these arguments. When President Trump says that jobs are being lost, he's talking about brick-and-mortar jobs. Folks, Amazon has been collecting sales taxes in Arkansas for several months now, and there has not been a giant spike in retail and brick-and-mortar businesses. So think about that for a second. If it's going to save... It's not going to save small brick-and-mortar businesses. They're still going to be at the mercy of the market. And right now, it's incredibly convenient to shop online. So we must abandon this idea that it will mean more jobs. We must abandon this idea that it will save small mom-and-pop businesses. And if you want to argue for the sales tax honestly, just argue that the government needs more money. That's your only fair, honest argument, is that you want the government to have more money from a sales tax standpoint. I am told here that this article that I just read does not mention the fact that South Dakota, the law in South Dakota was already struck down as unconstitutional, and it's on appeal before the South Dakota Supreme Court. So it will go before the Supreme Court, but it's already been struck down as unconstitutional once. So we'll see what the South Dakota Supreme Court says. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program, The Liberty Machine. The real, true, only Liberty Machine rolls on. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a Blue Ribbon Task Force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a Blue Ribbon Legislative Task Force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who is deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
All right, welcome back. The phone number to give us a phone call or give us a text message, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We were talking about Planned Parenthood earlier this hour. Specifically, I mentioned, if we really want to talk about evil that's in the world now, instead of the evil of slavery. What if we tried to attack, confront head on the problems with abortion? And I got a text message from Scott in Marmaduke. In 2012 in New York City, he writes, there were more black babies aborted than were allowed to be born. Isn't that an awful example of racism? It actually is. Matter of fact, I've read some knowledgeable publications on the 1974 Supreme Court decision, or 1973, Roe versus Wade, and that court, they thought that they were doing something. They thought they were doing something good. Obviously, they were wrong. They essentially, Francis Schaeffer, theologian, Francis Schaeffer said after that decision that the country's Christian consensus had been lost. It was gone even then. It was gone. After 1973, the Christian consensus of the country was over. But I've heard some people that I believe are intelligent say that if you would have been able to show the 1974 Supreme Court the racial outcomes of that decision, there's no way they would have upheld it. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true. That's certainly giving them the benefit of the doubt. We have to remember that, Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. She did believe in a racist, right? Isn't it amazing that it's the Democrat Party that is leading all of this? They're leading taking down the Civil War statues. They're leading the Planned Parenthood. They accept awards with the name Margaret Sanger on them, and yet the true history of the Democrat Party is one of race, is one of discrimination, is one of, if you look at Margaret Sanger, go read the stuff that she said about different races, and it was just unbelievable that that's not more commonplace, and yet it's the Republicans that are racists, is what they say. And we have Republicans in this state. We're going to talk about this when we come back at 5. We have Republicans in this state that bought into the narrative that Republicans are racist, so they decided to prove that they're not racist by separating Martin Luther King Jr. Day from Robert E. Lee Day. They did it all to prove to and guess what? People still aren't satisfied. They're still trying to sanitize history. And I just want you to know, Governor Hutchinson, when he really went to bat for separating Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee Day, he is part of this movement, this idea that we have to separate the two. Now, he directly disputes that, but this is one of the reasons I was against doing it, because it accomplishes nothing. It doesn't end disagreements. It doesn't do anything but bring it back to the surface. And in a weird way, us doing this, it contributes. You can just lump us into the topic and contributes to the problem that we're seeing now nationwide. Now they're publishing Confederate statues of Arkansas to be removed.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Break a leg, okay? You got to say break a leg. You don't want to wish the other thing, because that's not good luck.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're talking with Mark West, a Libertarian candidate for Arkansas governor. So as somebody who obviously appreciates the freedom that we have to exercise our religion in the First Amendment, free from government interference, talk a little bit about if you have seen any corporate influences on the current leadership down there. And specifically what I mean is back in 2015, we had the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which was really just trying to mirror what had already been passed in D.C., a decade ago. And, the way the story goes is, the LGBT crowd, they decided to characterize this as discriminatory. Corporations called down to the Capitol, one big Arkansas one in particular, yada, 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 a bill that Asa supported all the way essentially to his desk, he said needed to be rewritten. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't follow that bill particularly, but I do stand for religious freedom. I do believe that you should have what I call the freedom of association, regardless of whether you're a business or another entity, where you can, you have the freedom to choose what you're going to associate with, whether you're associating your business with something or you're associating your person with something that extends to, your religious activities. You should have the full freedom to express your religious activities and have the freedom to hold your religious consciences, in the workplace or, in the marketplace or wherever you go. You should be able to hold those religious consciences, and that's what I believe the First Amendment is designed to protect. And and that, that would be where I would stand on that.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's exactly right. You get into these situations, the florist, the cake baker, and this type of stuff, and that's why the LGBT crowd, they were saying, hey, this is discriminatory. And so I'm glad when you specifically say freedom in the marketplace, freedom in the workplace, freedom in the marketplace. It's really good because I got, I went down there, I did some man on the street interviews, and with the protesters, I was there with them, and I got some of these guys to admit, okay, well, let's take your argument to a doctor, and let's say this doctor is opposed to doing abortion because he believes that abortion is taking a human life. Their response was, well, you should have thought about that before you decided to become a doctor. And
yeah, I've heard that argument, but it doesn't fly. I mean, when you go to provide a service, you see a need in the community that you're providing a service for, and to deny a service is just, it is just part of the basic right that you have as a business owner. The no shirt, no shoes, no service. We've had those type of things in businesses for years. You have the right to deny certain services. And what you will have the impact of, and what you should have the impact of, is if people get mad enough at you for not providing service to a particular group, then they boycott you, and they can go use another business or go try another doctor. It is a complete invasion of someone's rights to force them to perform a service for you. That's conscription. That's slavery, and we left those days supposedly a long time ago. We don't live in those days anymore.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And you get to a point where you either agree with us or you're not allowed to have a business, and that's that's so dangerous, Mark, isn't it? I mean, and think about this: people on the left, whether we're shooting Steve Scalise or whether we're burning down Berkeley or whether we're knocking down a Ten Commandment statue, people on the left they seem to. We seem to be approaching a time that could lead to some really where danger and violence is a lot more common just based on your political affiliation than a lot of people may even think. We could never possibly get there, but I think tensions are really ratcheting up. What are your thoughts on the climate right now?
I agree. The political climate it's in bad shape. It has been for several years, and unfortunately, and this is the thing. This is why I think we need to keep as much of D.C. out of Arkansas politics as we can, because in D.C. what happens is somebody on the left will do something, and then somebody on the right will do something, and then they'll both say, well, on the left they're doing this, and so we have a right, it's okay for us to, do and say bad things and be combative because they're doing and saying bad things on the left and they're combative. And I'm like, no, that's an excuse. It's not responsibility. You need to take responsibility for the words that come out of your mouth and for the tone of your politics. And if you don't have the self-control to control the tone of your politics, that's something you need to look in the mirror and address yourself. As a libertarian, I believe strongly in individual responsibility. You take responsibility for your actions. And what it's going to take is each and every one of us taking responsibility for our own tone. When we get on Facebook or we get on Twitter, we don't have to blast somebody. But unfortunately, that's what gets the coverage is when somebody tweets something derogatory or
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media
All right,
Group.
folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine, and we want you to contribute to the program if you want to. The number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We reported, preliminary reports at the beginning of the show an hour ago about the Democrat Party of Arkansas. We can now confirm this. We have a story over at 4029 TV. Headline, Democratic Party of Arkansas calls for relocation of all Confederate monuments on public grounds. This is a story by Adam Roberts, who is the digital media manager at 4029tv.com. This is out of Bentonville, Arkansas. The Democrat Party of Arkansas released a statement on Thursday calling for the relocation of all Confederate monuments on public grounds. Quote, the time has come for these symbols of our past to be placed in museums and privately owned spaces rather than to continue to occupy public lands. This call comes. Some cities across the country have relocated their Confederate monuments after a deadly white supremacist attack on a church in Charleston in 2015. Let's see here. They one second here. Yeah, this is updated August 17th. This is interesting though. This call comes after in Charleston. The call comes after some cities across this country have relocated their Confederate monuments after the deadly white supremacist attack on a church in Charleston in 2015. I think this is just a little too fresh off the presses here. Okay, the issue picked up steam again after a deadly white supremacist rally focused on a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee this weekend. So anyway, this is where we are now, folks. The Democrat Party has essentially, with this statement, go up to the headline. Just show the headline. The Democrat Party of Arkansas has embraced irrelevancy in the state of Arkansas. Look at that. Relocation of all Confederate monuments. Go back. Do you still have the Twitter account up? No, okay, it's fine. Last hour we showed you the Twitter account of somebody posting the sites of where there are Confederate statues. Of course, there's none more known than the one at the Marble Palace in Little Rock. KATV, what is the future of Confederate monuments in Arkansas? We got some good statements here by Governor Hutchinson. They talk about what's the future going to be. This is a great question. What is the future going to be? What are they going to do with the statues on the grounds of the Arkansas State Capitol? Do you know that one of the reasons why many people did not support the separation of Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King, the holiday, is because they said next they will come after the monuments on the grounds of the Capitol? Did you know that one of the monuments on the grounds of the Capitol is actually dedicated to the women, how the Civil War affected women? The public scrutiny of monuments honoring the Confederacy follows a group of protesters. On the grounds of the Arkansas State Capitol, you'll find 3 Confederate monuments, all erected in early 1900s, still intact. Chris Powell, who's a spokesperson for the Secretary of State, said, quote, "We have not had any specific concerns here locally." Powell explained to KATV that any monument that is placed at the Capitol or removed off its grounds must be approved by the legislature. Any monument that goes up at the Capitol has to be approved by the legislature. It's up to the vote of the legislature, so if any citizen has an opinion on that, they want to contact the state legislature, they're free to do that, Powell said. In the meantime, both Governor Asa Hutchinson, along with the mayor of Little Rock, Mark Stodola, are weighing in on the matter. Let's get to the governor's statement. This is what Governor Asa Hutchinson says. Quote, "Every generation must affirm and live American values anew. Equal opportunity and respect for all races is fundamental to what is great about our country. The whole concept of white supremacy or neo-Nazi dogma must be rejected at every turn. After the Charlottesville violence, I consistently spoke out against the racism and hatred and violence displayed before a national audience. When it comes to the debate about our historical monuments, we cannot change history, but we must learn from it. We should not start taking down monuments just because they remind us of an unpleasant past. Refusing to face our history by dismantling it is a mistake. We should use our historical markers as teaching opportunities to provide great leadership for the future. Part of the legislation I signed to separate the holidays of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee was to use the history of the Civil War as a teaching opportunity for our students." No, that last part is called, "I don't want to be seen as contributing to the hysteria." See, that last sentence there, I'm sorry, Asa, I'm sorry. I know you. I know. See, You didn't listen to the people that told you this was a slippery slope. So now you're going to say that your support of separating the holidays is not a contributing factor here. At the very least, it's an admission that you don't see the ideological differences between both sides, that you're not seeing that there's clearly an ideological battle going on here that needs combating. And unfortunately, you separating the two holidays feeds further. Okay, we got a little bit more. Let's keep going. They're not going to be satisfied until the Jefferson Memorial is destroyed, is razed to the ground. They're not going to be satisfied until they remove Thomas Jefferson and put a statue of Lenin up there, until they put a statue of Karl Marx up there. That's what they want. These guys want statues and memorials of communists and mass murderers up there. Now that's the truth. Now if you don't agree with mine, I get that. I'm glad you're on board, Asa. I'm glad Asa is actually, at least until Walmart calls, Asa is saying, listen, we don't need to take down these statues. I'm glad that he's doing that. But I'm telling you right now, people told him you don't want to separate these 2 days. because it's a slippery slope and they're going to come for the monuments. They told him that. I can promise you somebody told him, they may come. But you know what? Personnel is policy. Asa has a Democrat for a chief of staff, right? So what are you going to do? Allison Williams donated money to a Democrat. You can go look at the financials. Chief of staff donated money to a Democrat. Personnel is policy. And it clearly has an effect on his thinking. No question about it. We should use he goes on. Let's finish the same. We should use our historical markers as teaching opportunities to provide great leadership for the future. Part of the legislation I signed to separate the holidays of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee was to use the history of the Civil War as a teaching opportunity for our students. Notice he says part of the legislation. There's probably something in the legislation that makes it sound all good. The civil. We need educational opportunities. Blah 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 blah. Look, but you shouldn't have even brought it up. You just don't even bring it up. Now I would have brought it up because this is part of the problem. You guys all accepted the liberal media narrative that Republicans are in control of Arkansas. They've got to prove that they're not racist. Let's separate the holidays. And I said, you guys, first of all, you're never going to appease them. You're never going to appease them. And number one, I think it's a waste of time. Number two, you're never going to appease them, and clearly you haven't. Now look what the Democrat Party of Arkansas wants to do. They want to take down every Confederate monument in the state of Arkansas? That's ridiculous. And we're going to say no to it until Walmart calls. That's what's happening right now. Mark my words. We're going to say no until Walmart calls. How long? I mean, we know Walmart already called out Donald Trump because they didn't think his statement was forceful enough. Right? And they're very upset about all that. How long? I mean, Trump has already said removing the statues are not a good thing now, and people are all upset about that you shouldn't remove the statues. How long before statues of George Washington have to go? How long before, I don't know. What about World War II monuments? Are there any World War II monuments that need to go down? Because, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of white male privilege in some of those World War II monuments. Maybe we don't. Maybe we got to get rid of them. This is just getting to a point that's ridiculous. And again, I'm thrilled. I'm glad that the governor is saying, look, we don't need to do this. That's good. Good grief. Could you imagine? I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think even the governor, I'll give the governor the benefit of the doubt here. Even the governor knows. I don't know if the governor has seen what happened in North Carolina, but we're dealing with some heathen people here. I mean, we're dealing with people who are not connected to reality at all. You're dealing with people that tore a statue down illegally, spit on it, and flipped it off like they were insulting the statue. I was telling my friend today. I was like, it reminded me of a bunch of kids playing, just using their imagination to play, I don't know, cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? When you're a little kid and you just go around and you pretend that anything is anything, That's what it reminded me of. It just a level of immaturity, and they think that they've accomplished something. They tore down the statue. They started kicking it. They might as well, put it in a headlock or something. Clearly, there were some people that broke their foot or really bruised their feet by kicking it so hard. And then they spit on it and they flip it off like, oh, that statue's so insulted. That statue, you taught it a lesson. I don't even think when ISIS was tearing down the monuments in the Middle East that they then went and started to beat the statue up. All right, we knocked the statue down. Now it's real. Let's hurt its feelings. Let's put it in the hospital. Like, what's going on with these people? I think even Governor Asa Hutchinson is like, this is a movement I'm not going to get behind. Unless Walmart calls. Now, this is what the governor said about President Trump's comments. Quote, in regard to the comments of President Trump, I am grateful that he clearly denounced white supremacy in very clear terms. I mean, go listen to the press conference. He's exactly right. He did denounce it in very clear terms. He goes on, but this is a moment that we need our leaders to take every opportunity to educate this generation about the pure evil of Nazism and to bring our country together. Okay. So I could speculate on what that statement means. But this is a moment that we need our leaders to take every opportunity, meaning maybe you don't combat by saying that there were leftists who were out to cause trouble too? Is that what the governor's saying here? We really can't know for sure. But that's his statement, according to reported over at KATV. Let me tell you something. They're coming for the monument. They're coming for the Civil War monument at the Marble Palace. They're coming for it. And you know what? I guarantee you they can't stand there. One of those monuments has an angel overhead. You've got the monument, and then you've got this angel behind it. Do what? I mean, they're gonna hate that. And how long until the next guy that knocked over the Ten Commandments monument that just recently got built and then immediately was destroyed? How long before some guy just starts? Of course, it's a little bit more substantial. Yeah, you didn't know that? Yeah, you remember. They put the Ten Commandments monument up down there, and then immediately some guy who did it over in Oklahoma knocked theirs down, came over and essentially did the version of Will Ferrell and the other guys where he just hits the accelerator and shouts, "America!" Oh, man. All right. We're going to take a break. Hey, but before we go to break, I want to before we go to break, I'm sorry. I want to remind you that you need to equip your business with the best cybersecurity available because cyber attacks disrupt business at a minimum. They're often intended to steal credit card information, bank account credentials, employee data. Cyber attackers are innovative. They're proactive. You've got to be proactive, too. At iTex, they deploy the best cybersecurity to protect their clients. Ask them about being a managed service provider. And don't be the guy that's hadn't been proactive and you've been, ransomware, or you've been attacked, or you've lost your data. I just want to give them a phone call. Give iTex a phone call. You've heard me talk about them now for a while, all this year. 870-336-9778. iTex. They are the text to trust. You can find them at itexusa.com. If you want to know more about them, they've got a great website, itexusa.com, 870-336-9778. Back in a minute.
Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com.
Arkansas small businesses are tired of taxes that are too high and regulations that work as obstacles to small business success. If you own a small business, it's time to take action. Now, I'm not talking about the local chambers of commerce. I'm talking about an organization that's actually run by small business owners and are fighting for small businesses right here in the state of Arkansas. They're called Conduit for Action, and they're on your side. Conduit for Action is here not to get something from the government, but to be left alone by the government. Think of them as your personal advocate for limited government at the Capitol in Little Rock. If you're tired of all the politicians talking with no results and ready for action, start outsourcing your government affair needs with Conduit for Action. Go now to conduitforaction.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforaction.org and stand up for small business in Arkansas.
What you cooking? It smells familiar.
I'm cooking something amazing, new, and different, and you're going to love it, babe.
Really? It seems like we've had this dish before.
Don't believe me? Come and taste it for yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm right. This tastes just like Obamacare.
No, actually, it's the new private option. I call this fantastic new dish Arkansas Works.
That's odd, because it looks and tastes just like Obamacare.
Why do you always have to be so critical? I'm in here cooking, trying to do something nice for the family.
Because I thought we talked about this before. I don't like Obamacare.
You just need to give it another chance.
So you admit it's the same?
No, it's different. It's Arkansas Works.
Let me ask you something. Does it smell like Obamacare?
Yes.
Does it taste like Obamacare?
I suppose so.
Are you using the same ingredients to make it as you used to make Obamacare?
Yes.
Then how is your so-called new dish, Arkansas Works, not Obamacare?
Well, let me explain, honey. You will remember, recently, I had my name legally changed at your request, right?
Yes, I know. You had it changed from Duke to Rover. I dislike the name Duke, and I think Rover sounds so much more personally responsible.
Well, now that I'm called Rover instead of Duke, I believe I can take the same recipe and ingredients and create a dish with the same smell and taste from before.
Okay.
And because of my name change, you will love it.
I'm not buying it. And I just realized the name Duke and Rover are both common names for dogs. PHP Parody. You're listening to the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, the Paul Harrell Program.
Yeah, so we haven't stopped John Brummett. None of this Civil War, Charlottesville stuff has stopped John Brummett from writing his article and giving his opinion about this. So again, the news, the Arkansas Democrat Party has now asked for they've called for all of the Confederate monuments on public grounds in Arkansas to be stored in a museum, but not the good way, not the Indiana Jones way. It belongs in a museum, not that way. Yeah, Indiana Jones didn't want the artifacts in a museum for politically correct reasons, because he didn't want the cross of Hernando in a museum because it might trigger some snowflake somewhere. He wanted it to protect the artifact while destroying every historical place that the artifact was that surrounded the artifact. As long as the artifact's there, but we'll just destroy everything else because that is real archaeology. Oh, man. Can you imagine the UFO hunters after that fourth one? They get there and they're like, you did what? Well, we put the skull back on and, the spaceship took off and went into another dimension. Can you imagine the UFO hunters like something? No. Of course, the water at the end of that one, the dam broke and basically washed out all the evidence.
Yeah, that's what the ship was doing, is damming up the
Yeah.
area.
Mhm.
But no, the UFO hunters, they're like, we would visit this once a week. What are you doing?
Yeah.
We were trying to learn things.
No, we had to put the crystal skull back on the body, back
that's
on the
just
skeleton
how
body.
things work.
Yeah, because, it already had, it already was showing that it had power just by itself. So he said, why not? We'll
Maybe we can get
do
more power.
exactly what the aliens want. But of course, you did have you had the Russians there in that one. People hated, what was it, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? People hated that one. I didn't mind. I didn't mind it as much. I thought it was pretty fascinating on a lot of levels. And I tell you why Indiana Jones 4, why I thought it was so refreshing to see a lack of green screen, except for the stupid monkey scene. I forgot about the monkey scene. Shia LaBeouf swinging through the trees on a monkey. Oh, that was awful. Never mind. I take it all back. It was horrible. I hated that movie. The only good thing I'll say about it is in the beginning on the university, you could tell that Steven Spielberg was actually shooting the way he used to shoot because their motorcycle chase and then and you've got the Jeeps going, it felt like a real Indiana Jones movie, and it felt so nostalgic because you could tell that it was shot with traditional filmmaking methods and not the newer filmmaking methods, where everything's CGI and everything, until you get to the stupid monkey scene. Gosh. And I wasn't a huge fan about the fire ant scene either. That was kind of weird.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Or semi-abusive at somebody, and then somebody will tweet it back, and before too long you got, somebody is firing shots at a congressman, at a baseball practice. It's sad that the climate is piling up to that, but generally when you have a clash like we do in our culture, you're going to have these conflicts. You're going to have this, this is caused by zero-sum politics. And I know you're familiar with that, the concept that, whoever wins, they get it all and the other side loses it all. We've had this no-compromise politics going on in Washington, this politics where we don't work together, where we don't have productive conversations, where we don't have meaningful relationships with the people that we're dealing with. I mean, I've seen people lose friendships over who they voted for president. Yeah. I'm like, that's just nuts. That's not what America is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. I have seen that too, or borderline, getting to that point. So we're talking with Mark West. Let's talk just really briefly about the Libertarian Party.
Okay.
You guys, is it easier to get on the ballot than it used to be? Is it hard to get on the ballot? What's it like?
Well, it's difficult right now because we have to do the signature drives, and we're still and we've turned our signatures in. We turned them in mid-July, so we were ahead of the deadline. And I think we turned in 15,000 some odd signatures. So we should, even once they throw out, because normally you lose a percentage of the signatures because they get thrown out, but we should have enough percentage that we did secure our ballot access, and we'll be running another full slate of candidates once we get through our nominating convention in February. But it's difficult and it's costly. See, this is where the law is kind of unfair to parties like ours, because we have to spend a lot of money and time and resources before the election ever starts just to get our ballot access. Whereas your Republicans and your Democrats are able to put those resources into candidate recruitment, into building their party, their infrastructure, getting their volunteer bases together. We're having to spend those time and those resources getting signatures just so we can get ballot access. So we start behind every election cycle. And hopefully we can, hopefully through my race for governor, hopefully I'll win this thing. And when I do, we have our ballot access and we have a governor that's representing the people of Arkansas, and then we don't have to worry about it next campaign.
So you're saying, right now, as far as ballot access goes, the laws are structured to where, you just can't be a libertarian and get on the ballot, but you can just be a Republican or Democrat and essentially get on the ballot. Is that what you're saying? Are there what barriers have they created barriers to protect the two-party system?
Yes, they have. The laws are a barrier that protects the Republicans and Democrats, because new parties have to jump through hurdles that the Republicans and Democrats didn't have to jump through when they established as parties in the state to begin with. And these hurdles, as I said, the ballot access, the signature drives, having to get this much in this many races, or, like last time we had candidates pulling 27, 28% in U.S. House races, but because our presidential candidate didn't play very well in this state, we didn't get to have ballot access, even though we had more candidates on the ballot in more races than the Democrats did. And so we still have to go through this ballot access.
That's nuts.
And it's sad, and it is. It's a way to protect the power in Little Rock, and I call on any members of the Arkansas Congress who want to be stand-up people and give the people of this state the voice they deserve, pass some legislation to make it where we can get this status so we don't have to spend all this money and time, and we can have our voice out there for the people here as well.
Yeah, consent of the governed is good. Why wouldn't people just want an accurate reflection of the way people feel? Mark West, the Libertarian candidate for governor of Arkansas. Hey, just tell people real quick where they can find more information if they want to.
Sure, thanks. We're going to have a website up in the next couple of days. It's markwest4governor.com, and it will be the number 4. So Mark West is the number 4governor.com. You can find me on Facebook. It's Mark West 4Gov. That's Mark West, the number 4, GOV. And on Twitter and Instagram, you can also reach me at Mark West 4Gov. So we're trying to keep it all streamlined and simple so people can find us. We're looking for any.
Watch Paul live at paulharrell.com. It's free and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
Eight 275-9799 is the telephone number. I certainly did like the conversation we had, Joe, in the interim there. Headline, a text message. The Democrats are trying to erase the history of their slavery ways and removing all records of it. That's what they want. Interesting text message. That's a really good point. Again, the headline of the hour, Democrat Party of Arkansas has called for the relocation of Confederate monuments in state and on public grounds in the state of Arkansas. Somebody writes, then it will be time for us to protest. I don't know what that means. David in Manila writing, what about the communist statues in the United States like Lenin in Seattle? Yeah, there's a statue of Lenin. Of Vladimir Lenin in Seattle, and a bunch of these Antifa people are, having picnics around it and stuff. So there are some statues that they think are perfectly fine. Can you believe? Can we take a moment and go ahead?
It just shows the irony of the Antifa people. Like, they're supposed to be anti-fascist. They're sitting around a statue of Vladimir Lenin.
I know, man.
And basically praising, worshiping at his feet. Like, it's so ridiculous.
You were saying at the beginning of the program, Joe, to me privately, that you didn't really know who Antifa was.
Yeah, yesterday when we were talking about it, I had no idea who Antifa was because I hadn't.
Well, we
I
haven't
hadn't
really
heard the name
talked about
before.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I last night when I was at home, I did some research, looked them up, figured out what they were all about, and they said it was anti-fascist, but I was like, I started going into what they believe and like things they've done. I was like, this seems a little fascist to me.
Yeah, that seems very fascist. Such an ironic name. Oh my goodness.
And like I told you, this is like a bit of dramatic irony where everyone outside of Antifa sees the fascism going on with Antifa, but they can't see it themselves. So it's kind of like we understand that they're being fascist, but they don't.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of dramatic irony.
In
real world.
We've got Mac in Cricket County. Is the Confederate Cemetery in Jonesboro in danger too? I don't know. I know isn't there a Confederate monument in Jonesboro on Southwest Drive?
Yeah, it's on Southwest.
Between McDonald's and Starbucks. It's got like a couple of flags, and it's got a partial rebel flag flying. Isn't there a Confederate battle flag?
Well, yeah, it's like a memorial. It's a memorial. It's just to remember the Confederate soldiers.
That's going to blow up. That's going to be if
Antifa gains traction.
Well, with a few radical leftists, that's the problem with the Democrat Party. What they are doing here is they're doubling down on their irrelevancy, and you've got a few Democrats that have switched to being Republicans, but they're still tax and spend Democrats. You have Republicans in leadership that are really tax and spend Democrats. But they've kind of jumped ship because they can see this has gotten ridiculous. So what's left on the ship? Who's left on the sinking Democrat ship? But the dedicated ones willing to go down with it, the crazies, the people that think it should be the law that we are forced to give all of our money to the government and have them divide it up and give it back to us equally. Although equal would be defined by the oligarchs, So that's not really a thing. But you know what I'm saying? The actual socialists, the actual people who are fascist, communists, whatever. Yeah, the ones that are like, well, bread lines are good. Bread lines are how the government takes care of the people.
Everyone gets equal amount of food.
Yeah,
everyone's equal.
Yeah, everyone's equal. Bread lines aren't that bad. You know, sometimes you have to starve 10, 15, 20 million people by cutting their food supply off. If the government were in charge of feeding us, we would starve. Let's all just admit that for a second. Rewriting history. I can't hear you, Joe. What are you saying? Seriously.
Also, let us not forget the death panels that come with most socialist countries like that.
Yeah, and the Obamacare that does have these death panels that McCain essentially votes for.
Our northern neighbors, Canada, they essentially have death panels because they have socialized medicine.
Yeah,
that's.
Well, let's look at Britain. I mean, I think maybe they took away. Did they take out? They might have taken out the death panels at this point. The Independent Payment Advisory Board is what they called the death panels originally.
Yeah, they still have them probably. They just don't like.
But over in Britain, they straight up have death panels. I mean, Charlie Gard, man. I mean, you can't go get treatment for your son. He's dead now. He's dead, and we'll never know if they would have just let him go. If it could have been more helpful if the medicine had gotten to him sooner. If this experimental treatment would have gotten to him sooner.
Yep.
But Antifa. Antifa just keep supporting socialized medicine. Rewriting history. Rick in Marion County. Rick writes, reminds me of reading in history what happened before World War I. What happened before World War I? Interesting. I'd like for you to expand on that. I'm going to be honest. I'm trying to think. Are you talking about? I mean, I know Archduke Ferdinand, and I know we had you had the Weimar Republic collapsing. Do we have any more of that text? Yeah. I mean, erasing history is something that's can be a powerful tool by fascists to make people forget where they came from, especially if where they came from is a threat to where the people want us to go. You know what I mean? John Brummett, though, this isn't lost on him, because I thought to myself, surely John Brummett's not going to get on board. Surely John Brummett, I mean, I know he's a liberal's liberal, but even surely John Brummett can see a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of really misguided young people that need jobs when they are tearing down statues and then spitting on the statues and flipping the statue off as if it's an accomplishment. Surely John Brummett's going to be like, this is really just not that productive. This is not a productive thing for our society. Maybe we need to lay off the the progressive Kool-Aid a little bit. Lay off of it. Brummett writes, the debate over Confederate monuments cries out for the thoughtful public dialogue that those grotesquely un-American neo-Nazis defiled Saturday in Charlottesville. Now, he's certainly right about you're not on a high horse. Everyone denounces racism. Well, obviously not the neo-Nazis, but the vast majority is not racist. The vast majority doesn't want to eliminate or be supremacist, or that's just again, the baseline in America at this point in our history is that racism's wrong. There is not a great need to point it out. I mean, by pointing it out, you're just fanning the flames. Did you see that in the Washington Post now you have people that are saying we've got to start throwing rocks because the Justice Department's now racist and the White House is now racist, and the media wants a war. The media wants complete and total chaos. We have people that want their power back so bad. They are so afraid of the status quo. Did you see Lindsey Graham misrepresent what Donald Trump said? He said that Antifa is on the same level as the neo-Nazis, completely misrepresenting. Donald Trump called him out, called Lindsey Graham a liar. We have people who don't have as much power as they used to, and they're using never let a good crisis go to waste is a real tactic right now. Say what you want to. I mean, I just did a segment last hour where I was disagreeing with Donald Trump on his stance on the internet sales tax. Okay? So, anyway, we welcome just the freedom of discussion here. So, John Brummett, though, we need to have a thoughtful public dialogue about Confederate monuments. Do we really? A thoughtful public dialogue? I mean, they're just statues. They're not harming anybody. They've been up forever. But apparently John Brummett feels the need to write this piece because a valued reader points me to comments 3 months ago by Condoleezza Rice, black and Southern born. The former Secretary of State said in an answer to a question that she shouldn't remove monuments. That we shouldn't remove monuments or change names to try to, quote, sanitize history, end quote. She said she believed in keeping your history before you. Quote, we as people have thankfully moved on, she said. You don't have to honor the purpose of the people on the wrong side of history, but you better be able to remind people. John Brummett writes 2 points on that. Number one, people clearly haven't moved on. Now, why haven't people moved on, though? Yeah, we're not allowed to move on because we have people that want political power. We have the media that want to lie to people about it.
Not just that, we have people screaming in our faces constantly, like for those of us who just so happen to be born into a certain race, we get called a racist or we get said that you're underprivileged because of who you are.
Yep.
And we get people screaming in our faces that we're all different when we're not.
Yeah, and you got to stop manspreading. You know, quit manspreading. You're white, male, privileged. You're spreading out too much when you're sitting on the subway. I mean, it's ridiculous. But you're exactly right, Joe. We're not allowed to move on. You know what Donald Trump said yesterday in the press conference? He said, well, what would he was asked about race relations. He said, you know what? If we would just have some jobs, I think they'd do a lot. If people had jobs, good paying jobs, that might do a lot to heal race relations because people wouldn't care about some of this stuff. They'd be moving forward, saving for retirement, doing those things that, you don't want to be a victim. Get out of the victim mentality. Get to work. Go earn something for yourself. This is America. Nobody's discriminating the way they used to. Come on.
It's like back when we had more jobs, like in the past, people would just talk about this around the water cooler and have open discussions about this at the workplace. Not, I'm unemployed. I'm just going to go stand in front of the statue and yell at people for days.
And look, there's a public relations firm or a headhunter firm that put out, I saw a report last night that actually put out a call to action a week before the Charlottesville protest. They were asking for photographers and they were asking for people to protest again. And this organization specializes in counter protests. And so there were people that engineered the possibility of conflict for sure. I need to find the report, but it's fascinating.
Who was the guy that bust people into, or that shuttled people into like rioting areas?
George Soros.
Sounds something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm telling you, they are freaked out right now that Donald Trump is in the White House. You say what you want to. Look, I didn't think that this was the case. But during the primary, I did not think that Donald Trump really represented a shift in power. I really didn't. And like I said, there's not a ton of stuff that there's things I disagree with him on. I just had a segment on it last hour. But my point is, just look at how people in the government and how the media is reacting to this. There is something that either has people legitimately worried, which some of the people are. They're honest, useful idiots, and they really are believing everything. But then there's another section of this that is like, wait a second. We're not calling the shots anymore like we used to. And they're freaked out. They are panicked. In a way I've never seen it before. Let's see here. Back to John Brummett. He says people haven't moved on. Thugs were very much in the present Saturday in Charlottesville celebrating the Confederacy as if partying in 1860. Well, no. Blacks who object to driving on a Confederate boulevard or happening upon a rebel general statue in their town's public square think they could better move on if their streets, names, and public spaces would please move on. So John Brumman here, standing with the Democrat Party, Arkansas Democrat Party now calling for all Confederate statues to be put in a museum. Sanitizing history is bad, and we mustn't do it, Brumman writes, but sanitizing lies in the eye of the beholder. Taking down a rebel-glorifying statue of Robert E. Lee strikes some as sanitizing history. But erecting the statue and leaving it up, as if to say that leading a treasonous war in advancement of human bondage is something to be exalted, strikes others as sanitizing history. What?
Can we please just have
not at all. That's
can we have a history
ridiculous.
lesson for this guy?
Yeah, go for it.
The last time I checked, and I had checked this often because to make sure that I'm right about this, the entire point of the Civil War was not for slavery. Yes, that just so happened to be one thing, but they were fighting for states' rights because the government was taking them away.
This is true. This doesn't ever get reported, but that was a big part of the Civil War. Yeah, was just the powers of the federal government. And there's no doubt that the powers of the federal government were forever altered because of the Civil War. And there was the moral issue of the time of slavery, and it was a big deal. And slavery was part of the reason, and the other part of the reason was, you know what, we think we should be able to make these decisions for ourselves. And you had people in the North there who said, no, you shouldn't, because, and then you have Abraham Lincoln that has the War Powers Act, and he takes liberties legally, he did, in order to preserve the Union. These are issues that a lot of times nobody wants to talk about.
And let's not forget that once slavery was abolished, for the most part, there were people who were slaves that went off to live lives and start jobs and have families on their own.
In the North, yeah.
Yeah, outside of working for someone that used to be their slave owner, but there were a lot of slaves who stayed with their slave owner and just became workers for them.
Yeah. Nobody is speaking of a thoughtful discussion. That's what he said. An honest public. That's what you just said. That's not the discussion. That's not the public discussion. That's not the public discourse the left wants. Yeah, exactly. Because what they want to say is they want to. They literally want to say this is still a problem today in the same way it was a problem then. And that is preposterous.
They're combating an idea. Okay, so the whole point of the Civil War, like we talked about, was states' rights and keeping the government small so the government can't impose upon the states. What does the Democrat Party want to do all the time? They want to impose upon the states. They want government to be very big. Well, they're trying to remove dissenting opinions of the past.
I think you're right.
Of what they try to promote.
But we can always go further back, though. Okay, so Native Indians, they had slaves. They would capture people. So when we get rid of any Indian monument, Indian statues, Indian reservations because of the and people love to say no, there was no violence in North America until Columbus got here. Are you serious? They
were warring nomadic tribes of Indians. Yeah. Of course there was going to be violence.
Yeah, no, that's not true. We gave them this. We had what was it? The Spanish, the conquistadors. We gave them the smallpox blankets and the bow and arrows and tomahawks. They didn't know anything about that stuff until we got here. The violent white men with their, the wide girths of their knees as they sit down and their man-spreading. For those of you that don't know, that's a thing now with feminists. They're mad that men biologically have to sit with their legs further apart to be comfortable. And they argue, do they really have to have their legs so far apart? Do they really have to have their legs so far apart to be comfortable? They think it's some construct that we've yeah, I get to take up more room on a seat.
It's just legitimately uncomfortable to sit with your legs together.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. In regards to moving on, listen to this. I got a text. In regards to moving on, if we take all the Confederate statues down and remove all flags and rename all street buildings and dates, can we then stop referencing slavery? The answer, that's a great question. The answer is no. just like Asa Hutchinson signed into law the separation of Robert E. Lee Day and Martin Luther King Day, ridiculously, by the way, nothing appeases them. What are we doing now? There will be something else. And Donald Trump hit the nail on the head. Okay, let's get rid of Confederate statues. Let's get rid of Confederate statues in Arkansas. Let's get rid of Washington in Arkansas. That's what it said. Let's get rid of President George Washington. Let's get rid of Thomas Jefferson. Let's get rid of John Adams. Let's get rid of it all. Let's get rid of churches. Do you want to do that? Let's tear down churches because they're going to trigger me. That church triggers me because people go in there and they worship a God and they believe that the Bible says that my lifestyle is a sin. Let's get rid of churches. That's triggering me. I mean, where does it stop? Where does it stop, ladies and gentlemen? We got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. Back in a minute.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know, the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then, remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
This is Mother Government. My people, the promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works Obamacare private option, has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hey, on this tearing down of monuments, in all seriousness, I need to talk to the women out there. You telling me there's no women? If we're going to apply this logic to everything, which is, it's not really sound logic at all, but you're telling me there's no women out there that get triggered when they see the Clinton Library because, you know, of Clinton's history with women? There's nobody out there that's like, Bill Clinton is, I mean, there are people that say they were raped by Bill Clinton. There are people that say they were harassed by Bill Clinton. There are people who say they were abused by Bill Clinton. Where are the feminist women demanding that we tear down the Clinton Library, or at least rename it because of they're triggered? Maybe name it the Monica Lewinsky Presidential Library. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for being with us. This broadcast is available over at paulharrell.com for free. Buy our Liberty Machine t-shirts, and we will see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday. Be safe, Arkansas.